Hey there guys, welcome back to the worst War Machine channel on the internet. I'm Malorian, and this is going to be the continuation of our series talking about power attacks and how they work. One of those things where they might not come up about every single game, but if you know how these things work, you just are a better gamer because you have more tools at your disposal. Now, we've already talked about the headbutts, we've already talked about the tramples, and in each of these cases we've talked about the rules and kind of the tricks and around those types of things. Now, the next one that we have to talk about is going to be throws and slams, but there's an important rule that I want to be covering before I get to those. So this video is going to be on that, and that is going to be the rule of least disturbance. This is a rule where I see this being messed up all the time, where judges are called in and it's like, oh, I think this goes here. Yeah, just slide this over there. And it's one of those things where it's interesting because even a lot of times judges aren't called because the player's like, yeah, I think that's how it works. You know, logically, they think it makes sense one way. Like, yeah, that's where that model goes. Just shove this thing over there. And I guess at the end of the day, it's more happy that the players are happy. And then, like, who cares what the rules actually are? But I thought before we get into slams and then throws, we really have to talk about the rule of least disturbance. Now, to know when this is actually going to be occurring, it's basically whenever a one model is going to be ending up on top of another model, and you can't have overlapping models, so then what can you do? This doesn't happen during a headbutt. You know, you headbutt something, it's now knocked down. Doesn't happen in a trample because really the rule there is you can't end your movement on top of something, so just go as far as you can and there you are. But when it comes to throwing and slamming, you could be ending up with models ending up being on top of other models. So what do you do? So what we're going to do in this video is just going to be a nice simple one where we're going to be covering that. So this is what it says in the book, and it's all of 2 paragraphs. This is it. It's not like you go into this and it's pages and pages and pages. This is really all it is. So, rule of least disturbance. Some rules can cause the bases of moving models to overlap those of other models temporarily, such as when a model is thrown or slammed. Once the model has stopped moving, models must be repositioned so that no bases overlap. The model that was moving stays in the final position. Other models are moved out of the way to make room. If the model that was moving overlaps the base of a model that cannot be moved, the moving model is repositioned using the rule of least disturbance. So, in general, whatever is moving, if I'm throwing this jack, wherever that jack ends up, that's my home. Everybody else, get out, unless you get to a spot where the other things can't get out, and then I'll move myself because, well, you can't move. So, to determine which models to move and where to move them, first identify the fewest models that would need to be moved to make room. Then find the locations to move them to create the least total disturbance moved. If multiple options yield the least distance, if one model is centered over another, for example, randomly determine the option to use. The model's facing does not change when the model is moved as a result of the rule. That's it. Boom. Done. So what this really means then is that if, let's say, for example, we'll go with the easiest one first. I am throwing my heavy up onto a colossal. Boom. I've thrown this heavy. I'm saying I'm now the moving model. I end here. This is my location. Everybody else out. Well, the colossal can't move, so I'll have to move instead. Well, I'm in the middle of this base. Do I go back the way I came? Do I go this way, that way, continue my going? Well, what does it says right here is that you go whatever is the least amount of distance. So if you are just partially onto a base, oh boy, I have a base right here just to kind of show this. If I'm thrown on and I end up here, well, obviously this is going to be the fastest way out. If I would normally go and that's the fastest way out, but there's another model there in the way, well, then the least one, the models being moved to be the least amount would be either to the one side or the other. And if those are exactly the same, you randomize. So the same thing happens the other way. So that's the easiest one, where I'm landing on a big old colossal. Where am I on the base? What's the fastest way that I can slide off of this model? The other one is if I'm being thrown. Again, the thrown model normally has priority, except for when something says it can't. And then you're saying all the models underneath me, get out of the way. Now, for the most part, that's going to be extremely simple, because just like in this case, when my model ends, everything I'm on top of, unless it's exactly centered, which will like never happen, there's going to be some direction where it's faster for it to get out of the way. So you just move that model out of the way. If there's multiple models, same things, move them out of the way. And if there's some options, what do? The one that's the least amount of movement. So it'd be like, well, I could do this, and then this would move here, and then this would move here. We'll add up all those movements, and that's probably less than just going slightly to the side and only moving that one model slightly farther. So that's what it really is. I always see all these types of things being said wrong. We're like, oh no, the thrown model is going to stop when it hits here, or something like that. And it's like, well, that's not how the least disturbance really works. So when we actually get into a slam or a throw, there might be some parts of that where it does say that it stop, and that's separate. That's for those power attacks. But for this rule of least disturbance, that's very important. And I think the main one where this is going to be coming up is the slams. But just remember, the model moving takes priority, and the only time where it's not saying everybody out is when they literally can't move, like things like colossals or buildings or whatever else. So there you have it. I really wish that this one could just be something where, like, you know what, everybody knows how this really rule works, we'll just go straight into those power attacks. But I kind of felt like this is one where, like, I might need a little bit extra. So there you have it. Thanks for watching. If you have any other questions, put them down below. Like I said, I just need this as a little step, and then coming up after this, we're going to be doing throws and slams. So I'll catch you then. Bye.